presented these slides today. Are these slides that you would be willing to let people have access to after the event?
Yep. Just send me an email.
Oh, okay, yeah, so that's one way to handle it. Otherwise, we could also make them available. Could we put them on the Luther or the website? Well, we could follow up with that. Just realize that. I know I was taking notes feverishly. It wasn't so easy. Well, thanks. Let's give Kelly a hand. Just give us a second here to before I have our panelists come up, I just want to say a couple things about this brochure. Anybody need one of these? This is a new initiative from the Winneshiek Energy District, so anybody need one of these? I'm on the board. Larry Grimstad is here. He's on the board. I've got one more. Anybody else? Okay. You're all familiar with soil and water conservation districts. Pretty much one in every county in the United States, and they're valuable because they give farmers professional technical assistance on a variety of things regarding soil and water conservation. The Winneshiek Energy District is the first of its kind in the United States. Our goal is to bring the same level of technical expertise to homeowners, business owners, farmers with regard to energy. And so we've been around for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now. We got a big federal grant because of the stimulus bill a long time ago. That's all gone now. But we use that money to motivate homeowners and business owners in basically the core in Winneshiek County to invest in energy efficiency. And the district, through 2 different programs, home energy planning and through the Green Iowa AmeriCorps team, has served, I don't know how many hundred households and businesses, but many, and some total of over $1 million of investment in energy efficiency, which by the time you figure out how much energy you save over time is going to have a $3 million payback. So that's all money that stays in our county, or at least it stays in the pockets of people who made that, made those investments. And so what we're trying to do is to take that same sort of level of attention to a home or a business and create the opportunity for us to provide an energy planning service for farmers. And so the brochure you have simply talks about that. And our panelists perhaps can talk more about their experience with farming and solar. But I don't want to take any more time to kind of go through the brochure. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. But if you are a farmer and you're interested in having the Energy District come out and kind of do a comprehensive look of your consumption of energy and opportunities to save, the contact information is on the back of this sheet. We have a grant from the USDA for 3 years to help reach out to farmers in the 6 counties around Winneshiek County. We've got a proven track record of helping homeowners and business owners make wise and prudent investments that have reasonable payoffs. We're hoping to do exactly the same thing for farmers. So if you're interested, the persons to contact are Andy Johnson, our executive director, and Kayla Kother. Andy is in Cedar Rapids. His kid's making a presentation down there. And Kayla is at the Future Farmers of America meeting somewhere. And so she couldn't be there. But they are eager to help you in any way once you've read through this brochure. So,
and that's for 6 counties, you said?
Yeah, the 6 counties basically around us here. Yeah, the contiguous counties. Yeah, so we're proud of that and eager to get started on it. So, we've got we have three folks, Lyle Luzin, Steve Elay, and Carlton Chose, who I'm going to ask to come up here one at a time. Maybe we'll start with Carlton, since it's maybe easiest for you to get out. Carlton, just for them to share their experience of investing in solar. And then once each of the three has shared whatever they want to share, then they'll stand up here and field any questions that you have. And once we're done with that, then we'll retire to the concourse and enjoy refreshments, and you'll have an opportunity to meet with them. So, Carl?
Well, good morning. I was really counting on being last, and we'd be short of time, so I'd be a short presentation. I farm out west of town here by the Madison Lutheran Church, and how I got involved in this solar project is I've always had an interest in solar energy. I've talked about with my heating people about trying to do something with a solar system to produce heat for our house, and we never were able to really make it work, or it didn't make sense how, because it'd be too much of a convoluted system. Iowa farmers across the state have always been interested in conservation projects, whether it be soil conservation or energy conservation or green energy, whether it be ethanol or sun. That's why I guess I got involved for some of those reasons. And when I started thinking about it, I ended up working with Perry Novak. And I didn't, just because he is my electrician, I'm not saying anything good or bad about anybody else. That's where I ended up with. I put up a 28 kV system, and I have sort of a beef operation and a small drying system on the farm side that it powers. I'm a newbie as far as we only got the system operating between Christmas and New Year's. Yeah, you can see the dates, why we got operating when we did. We've looked at, I have 4 different sites that I could put up a solar PV system. And every site is completely different because of the usage. And as a farmer, we always want to do things that makes us feel good, but I still need to make it, the numbers to pencil out. And this site that we put it on is the site that penciled out the best. And that's what you have to do too. You have to go to a provider or a vendor and work the numbers. And any of the providers, I'm sure, would help you work through the process to see if it's something that you think will work for you. And then, of course, you have to work with your tax accountant, which you heard. So, it's up and running, and it's, I guess that's basically all I really have to say about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you get a REAP grant?
No, I did not. And the reason I did not was, I understand with the REAP grant, you need to, if you have a house on the site, you have to meter it separately.
They changed it.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I'm in an REC district with Cresco, and every REC, it seems, or many RECs have different policies. And the RECs are working on, they have an evolving process of their policy because this is new. And they're trying to figure out their way to make this work for them as well as it works for us. And it was just, when I originally signed up, I have a letter that says, my agreement says that at the end of the year, on December 31st, if I had overproduced more than what I used, I just lost it. It was theirs. Now, the other day, Brian Cranbeer, the manager, called me up and said, no, that's not how they're going to do it. And also, in visiting with him, I asked him about, well, have you thought about extending the drop dead date to March? Because I use a lot of electricity in the winter months. And he said they were talking about it, made no commitment. And I think all this, of course, he's not going to commit until he takes it through his board. At least I would hope not. But I guess, that's probably been the biggest challenge, just because getting a clear, concise, accurate, permanent answer from the RECs. Because, you know, you use those numbers when you're figuring whether or not it's going to work for you financially. And if the numbers are changing, the rules are changing, that makes it more of a challenge. The RECs, Kelly talked about, or Jim did, the Iowa Utilities Boards, and they are not regulated by the Iowa Utility Boards. The RECs aren't. They're kind of out in DC or on their own as far as regulations like that. So basically, that boils down to, that means that we as member owners really have to visit with our board members on the RECs to express to them how important this is, that we make it work, that they make it work for us. Because you know, when I produce the electricity in a peak alert, you hear that on the radio all the time. That brings down the high-priced electricity that they have to buy from their generators. So in reality, during those times, I'm saving my fellow members some cost because I'm providing it at a much cheaper rate. There's no question, you know, we don't have a net metering law here in Iowa as of this point. It's probably something that Iowa should probably be working towards, just because it creates a system that we all understand. So, yeah.
Now, if your system produces more than what you would use on that location, with REC, you can't use that energy to offset one of your other locations?
At this point, I cannot, and they refer to that, I believe, as aggregate metering, and they do not do that. And I can understand and accept why they do not like that, because when I'm doing that, I am also using their infrastructure, their lines, their poles, and those aren't cheap either. You know, in this conversation, I definitely understand and accept and respect the fact that the RECs still need to be profitable or have money to operate, because I still need them too. You know, we have to have a symbiotic relationship whereby we both come out ahead on this. And I think that's what Cresco REC is working to try and do. At least that's what I hope they're doing. So.
Thanks, Carl.
Yep, thank you.
Steve?
Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Elay. I'm a partner in the Anderson Law Firm here in Decorah. I've been there about 20 years, practicing about 30. First became aware of alternative energy in a serious manner. I worked for a lawyer in Cedar Rapids in the early 80s who was personally invested in wind power, and he was just maybe a little bit ahead of his time, probably made more off those investments than he did off practicing law over the years, but sort of brought an awareness to me that alternative energy was out there and coming. As far as the solar project that our office did, first of all, a couple of caveats. I will try and answer questions, but I should let you know I am a trial lawyer and mediator. I am not a tax lawyer. So if you have additional tax questions, Kelly would be a good resource, or Lee Wilmarth or Dan Redheim and my office are both up on the tax ends of these types of projects. Also technical questions, sorry, was an English major. I'm here basically to talk to you from the perspective of a customer and someone who has put this system in, and just kind of tell you briefly the benefits that we've already received. I believe we contacted Winneshiek Energy District maybe 3 years ago for an audit of the building. The building that I work in, it was built as a law building by Cal Anderson about 30 years ago. It was built with the existing technologies at the time. And so it's a 30-year-old building, and things start to need to be replaced and updated and so We had the audit done, we did some changes to lighting, thermostats, that sort of thing, but really not too much. We're then contacted again, I think beginning of last year, about the idea of doing solar, and especially the idea that Alliant had a significant rebate program in place that was going to end around Halloween of last year. We did put a system in, it's a 20 kilowatt system. The system, we're fortunate enough to have a building that is oriented east-west, so we had a roof that faces directly south. Probably believe 60 panels up there that blend in nicely on the roof line. Cost was approximately $65,000. The rebate which was an important piece of the project for us, was about $24,000. So that makes our payback significantly shorter, obviously, on the project. We also qualify and will be taking for the federal and state tax credits. And so the numbers guys in the office tell me we've got about a 4 to 5 year payback where the system will pay for itself. The other way of looking at that, and I did check the numbers with our office manager, is it was indicated to us that the solar system would take care of about half of our energy or electricity needs over a given month. And those numbers are tracking actually a little bit better than half. Electric bill down from an average of $484 to $232. Putting in the project itself was fairly painless as far as we were able to keep working. You know, there was we used Cora Electric. We had a good experience with them. There are plenty of good options as far as contractors here in Winnebago County to do that sort of a project. We've been told that the expected life of the project is 20 to 30 years and possibly longer than that. So again, it seemed like, bottom line, seemed like kind of a no-brainer from the financial end of it. Also something tangible that we could do as far as trying to move towards alternative energy use, you know, putting our money where our mouth is in effect. So happy to take any questions along those lines.
You have shingles or what's on your building height?
Yeah, just regular shingles, yeah.
Pretty new roof or older roof?
I believe we got a new roof in 2008 when most people in Decorah did with that hail that came through. I remember somebody stopping by the office then and saying, yeah, this is quite a community improvement project you go get. It's getting new shingles. I said, no, we get hail shingles. So yeah, it's would be roughly 2008.
Yeah, so you know, if a panel's gonna be up there for 20, 25 years, you gotta think about what kind of roof you're putting it on. So better to have a newer roof than an older roof.
Did you have structural work underneath the roof or?
Other than moving some venting for plumbing, I don't think we really had to do much of anything. Yes?
No extra supports underneath the whole roof?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Yes?
Kind of going back toward your attorneys, is there any legal liabilities that come up with hooking into the grid that we should be concerned about as producers of electricity?
I guess the short answer to that question is there wasn't anything that stopped us from doing it. I mean, there's always risk. My wife and kids are always sort of scolding me for seeing risk where maybe it's not worth talking about. But on this, we weren't really concerned about anything that wouldn't be covered by our normal building insurance or things like
You gotta
that.
have a lockout, basically.
Pardon?
You gotta have a lockout. So if the lines go down, that you're not backfeeding, really working.
I trust the technical
Yeah,
people. Yeah.
Code requires that they shut down. If there's no power, the system has to shut down. So
Good
they
question.
can't
I haven't
everything.
thought of that.
Any other questions for Steve?
A comment for Steve or maybe in Carlton about insurance coverage for property damage or insuring or loss. Any issues with that or any movement?
Nothing that sticks in, no, I think we re-upped everything in the building, and I don't think it was a big deal.
Carlton.
Of course, I insured it in case a tornado blew it all over, but I'm required by REC to have a liability policy, but my farm liability policy was no additional, other than the property, PC stuff.
Okay.
Yes.
You talked about the lockout. I understand when the power goes down, it separates it. Does your solar still work, so you have power on the location? It shuts everything down.
The reason being that the technology in the system makes it shut down when the power turns off, so that you're not producing, so if they're working on the line down to the neighbor's house, you're not hurting someone. And that's a code requirement, there's no way around it.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Wow.
I jotted down some things here. So got some. Our system went in live on July 17th of 2013, so it's a year and a half experience now. So I got in on the $3,000 Iowa credit, not the $5,000. So our system is 10.78 kilowatts. It's a 44 panels. We're a ground mount. And it's angled at 35 degrees. I don't know what yours is at, Carlton, but they know the difference.
About 32, 33 degrees.
Yeah, ground that is the optimum for this latitude. Ours is not movable, so we, you know, if we could move it, we'd get more in the winter if we move it at a sharper angle, and more in the winter or summer if we move it at a flatter angle. But we chose not to go that route. Some of the interesting things I think are that the estimates that you get out there underestimate the actual production. And I was told that by our installer was Go Solar, Dennis Potratz. We worked with him and we helped him do the installation. So our rated size is 10.78 kilowatts. When I did the estimates, I went through and did 2 years of analysis of my electrical usage by month. We were at a dual meter situation where we had a dual fuel rate, so we were getting a discount on our electrical dual fuel rate. And so when we went away from that to the solar, we lost our dual fuel rate. So that's another cost that we have to calculate in there because we now have a greater cost. So everything that we buy is at the single rate. So when I did our estimates, I was told by Dennis that I should bump up the estimate of what the website estimated by about 13%. So I added 13% to what I thought we'd be producing over what the estimate said. So the estimates that I had was, the estimator said that out of a 10.78 kilowatt system, I should get 13.3 kilowatts. So I did my estimates based on based on 14.99, which is my estimate of what would be actually produced over what the estimator estimated. So in other words, rather than going with 13.3 like the estimator said, I used 14.99. My actual 365-day rolling average has been 15.62. So the actual versus rated is that I'm producing at 149% of what the website estimate said would be available. So that's good to know.
Well, is that the Iowa Solar website, or is it the PV Watts website?
PV Watts.
PV Watts, okay.
Yeah.
So do they upgrade those estimators such that they take out that inaccuracy, or from year to year, or is it just?
You know, there's a back end on PV Watts that you can go in, and
Yeah,
they're
you can
assuming some just older technology, less efficient inverters and things like that. So if you really want to dig into it, you can go into the back end and adjust. Especially if you're going to use microinverters, you want to bump that up.
And this is probably where your installer is going to be able to help you a lot in terms of what actual production will probably look like, depending on whether you have any shading, orientation, pitch.
Yeah. And they allow you to change the pitches there, and I did an analysis over each month, what the solar angles would be and what the estimates would be for each of those things, and came to the conclusion that Dennis was right, that 35 degrees was a good angle. And it turns out that is the optimum angle 32, 35 in that area for our latitude. So our costs were $3.55 per kilowatt for the system itself. We had to put in a couple of $2,200 into electrical work, and REC permit of $550, their engineering fee, and the Iowa permit of $50. The gross total was $41,042 for the system, or $303.81 per kilowatt. Taking the credits off, then it's a $12,000, $313 federal credit, and a $3,000 Iowa credit gave us a net total of $25,729. So the net cost came to us at $2.30 per kilowatt hour, per kilowatt of system purchase. Now, I ran an estimate spreadsheet that tried to take into consideration how would this play out, recognize that I have to reduce my dual fuel, increase my rate because of the no longer availability of dual fuel rates. I used a 25-year estimate, and I estimated that electricity would increase at the rate of about 5% a year. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but you got to use something. So for my purposes, I did not, since I'm on a farm, but most of the electrical usage that I have is residential. 2/3 of our electrical usage is our geothermal system, because we're totally electric. We don't buy any gas, we don't buy any oil. The geothermal system, the cost is running the pumps and the compressors. So heating is primarily, the cost is running compressors. So our electrical usage spikes significantly in the winter and is very low in the summer. It's very efficient for air conditioning purposes, and of course in the mid-range area where you're not heating or air conditioning, it's, then you don't use anywhere near as much. So I estimated then that over those 25 years, I'd produced 390,500 kilowatt hours. So taking the cost that I had involved in that then, assuming the 5% electrical rate increase, that would mean that in 25 years, the cost of electricity would be 36.33 cents per kilowatt hour. It's currently running, depending on if it's summer or winter, either about 12 or 14 cents a kilowatt hour. So taking that over the 25 years, that means that the electrical produced by our system over 25 years would average 6.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, of course, it's front loaded. I had to pay for the thing up front. But what I'm doing is I'm paying essentially up front for 6.6 cent electricity over 25 years. For my purposes, since I didn't bother depreciating it because the percentage of electricity that is actually allocable to farm use is really only about 10%. It just wasn't worth it for the numbers I was working with to depreciate it. So my payback period comes out to about 12 years. Now during that time, during the 25-year time, I was told that I probably should expect to replace the inverters once. I built in an inverter replacement cost into that. So with the taking into consideration the tax credits, I have about a 12.5 year payback period. Without those tax credits, about 19. Now, what rate does that come out to? Well, return on investment over 25 years is about 152%, which leads to a 6.61 annualized rate of return on that investment. So, given the rates of return on investments these days, 6.61 doesn't sound too bad over 25 years. The chances of me living there for 25 more years is nil. So somehow I either got to be happy to give that away to someone. In this case, our daughter and her husband said they are going to take over living there when we fail to do that. So therefore, I'm going to do that. Otherwise, I would hope I would get it out, somehow by having the purchasers in place recognize that there's a benefit. When I was doing the estimates, I estimated that we would be producing about 60% of our power. Between 50 and 60% of our power needs. Our needs are right around 25,000 kilowatts per year. And of course, this last winter proved to be a real tough winter. We actually used about 30,000 kilowatts this last year because of the extra heating produced and the needs because it's all electric. But over this last year, we still produced about 56%, even including the extreme winter. One of the things to note is that as the weather gets colder, you get more efficient on solar panels. We like to think it's the opposite, but they get less efficient in warm weather. So the optimum time I found for our system, with our orientation, our angle, is in the March and April period. I hit a maximum of about 80 kilowatt hours produced in a day. I think it was in late March last year. This time of year, I'm producing on a good day right around 50, and as the sun gets more hours in the day, it'll increase slowly as we get up into the 70 kilowatt hours per day range. And that's where it'll stay during the summer period. There was a question regarding, what is the question?
Insurance coverage?
Insurance coverage, yeah. I have my insurance through Norwegian Mutual, and what they said is they treat it as a building. So I just gave them the value of the denizen of the building. They added that on as my rate, and like Carl said, you have to have proof that you have liability insurance, which of course is standard anyway. So that's kind of my story.
Other questions for Lyle?
How did you, or what went into deciding how many panels you would do?
Good question, yeah. So the question was, do I underbuild by how much, or, you know, don't overbuild, because I'm not a utility and I couldn't really sell it. So the question was anywhere from 100% of my estimate down to something less than that. And so it came to a combination of what I thought I could afford, but also I ran the numbers on what I thought, what would be the rate of return. And what I found is that about 50% gives you the maximum rate of return on an annualized basis over the 25-year period. Now, as you go out farther, of course, if the system lasts 30 years to 40, 50 years, which of course solar panels ought to, that rate of return gets greater and greater and greater, because if you don't have to replace them, you just get more payback after it's all paid off. But I found, as I ran the numbers, that 50% approximately was the greatest rate of return on a percentage basis. And that also happened to fit about with what I was going to do.
So how do you decide when you look at what's going on with the technology and efficiency, panels? I mean, do you get to that point and say, just gotta do it?
Yeah, yeah. You say I can either delay forever because you know that things will always be improved in some fashion. If you do that, you'll never do it. But 2 years ago, 2 years before this, I wouldn't have done it. But 2 years ago, when the price of panels dropped precipitously, primarily because of what was going on in China, then it became, the economics changed. It just suddenly changed completely. And then it became worth it. At this point, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it to anybody, because it's... And the other part of it is that, if you're oriented toward thinking that this is a good thing to do, it's not just because of financial. You're not here because of the finances. You're here because you say, well, this looks attractive to me in many other ways. And at some point, you have to decide whether you're going to do something for the benefit that you think it provides in addition to the finances or not. The finances just makes this feasible. And at some point, you kind of have to decide, I'm going to do this for the good of the larger humanity as a whole, and I'm going to stop sitting in my kitchen. Do something. Yeah.
I just want to piggyback a little bit on what you just said there. We talk about whether or not it works financially, but in the system I have, I can look on my computer and see